Welcome back, everyone, to R2Kast number 46. Today we have, well, if you're on Instagram, I'm quite certain you'll have seen Gemma's post. We have the Agri-social scientist. Gemma, if you'd like to say hello.
Hi.
Before we get on into another excellent episode of the R2Kast, I would just like to thank the sponsor for the show today, The Scottish Farmer, a weekly magazine highlighting everything you need to know regarding the Scottish agricultural industry, whether it's breaking news, events happening in the sector, market reports, classified ads, or just wholesome stories happening in the industry. The Scottish Farmer's got it for you.
So looking forward to a good chat today. When we were arranging the podcast, well, actually, one of the main reasons that I originally got in touch was in the bio on your Instagram, it says food security, which is really exciting because, as some of you know, my master's in food security. But when you mention food security to people, they're like, what's that? Putting a padlock on the fridge? No. And I was just quite excited that someone else has actually heard of this term before, heard of this idea, and we can probably get into that at some point. But before we do, could you give us a bit of background about yourself, Gemma? What's the story of you?
How much time you got?
Probably an hour and a bit, actually.
Well, we'll just finish. We'll fill half of that with this then. So, yeah, I don't, it probably surprises most people, I don't have an agricultural background at all. My family couldn't be further from farming. They hate it. They think it's dirty and they like towns. They like to have access to things like gyms.
Yeah.
Which out here we don't have. So it just sort of fell into agriculture. I studied consumer behavior and marketing at the University of Reading, who has a great agricultural school. And I, for some random reason, was put in the agricultural school. I was around farmers all the time. And I remember going to this talk about, it's before the Brexit vote, and these two farmers came in, like going head to head on whether or not it was a good or bad idea for farmers. And I was sitting there like, this is really bad. Like, this is a really serious issue. And no one else had any idea this was going on. It wasn't in the media or anything. And I was just gobsmacked. And so I went on to do a master's after that in environmental social science, so still down the social sort of route. And I focused on sustainable diets, motivations behind taking up certain things, same with farmers and agri-environmental schemes. And then I went through the campaign route with Save British Farming. And now I've quit my London job. I moved up to the Lake District and I bought some pigs, and that's what brings me here.
See, I love this. Like, I mean, I've said a few times when I started this that the reason this whole thing started was someone asked me back in July 2020, like, what jobs is there that we can get into? I'm not from farming, what can I do? And I just started getting in touch with folk that were either not from farming and in farming, or just in farming, and showing what was out there. And and a lot of these people are working on farms. A lot of these people are promoting agriculture. So it's quite cool to get different sort of, how would you say, sort of avenues into farming. It's good to hear those stories. So looking forward to it. You said access to things like gyms. You work on a farm with pigs and sheep. I'm sure you get the exercise you require.
Yeah, sometimes you just want to be clean when you're working out. Like, you want to be with people and have a discussion and a drink.
True. As someone like myself, working out is maybe not the thing I think of very often when I maybe should. When I was thinking of the things near me, I was sort of thinking, like, takeaways and that.
Yeah, there's none of that. They don't reach us.
Could you tell us a bit about your undergraduate degree? What was involved in that?
The consumer behavior and marketing one.
Yeah.
It's psychology behind why people buy things and how you manipulate it. The basis was I wanted to go on to work for a big supermarket like M&S and persuade people to buy more food.
Yeah,
it's not a stance I now agree with, but that was where I started.
Was there any talking about agricultural produce in that, or not?
No, not
really.
Not when I was done. I've done various work experiences with supermarkets or food chains, and there's no link to farmer. It's all about how can we increase sales, what has a bigger margin, what do consumers want, you're not even in relation to supply chain, you're just marketing, really. I think that might be changing now, and depending on the supermarket, of course, but that was my experience anyway.
I think that supply chain itself now is a marketable entity. Folk want to hear about it. So I think it probably is more related now. And this is drawn figures from my undergrad, however many years ago. From what I remember, pork retails at 425% of what it wholesales, and beef and lamb is just under 400%, about 390. Now, maybe you know figures on that, or maybe you don't, but I seem to remember something like that, and that's sort of like, that's going to create a detachment anyway. But the marketing side of it is it's a confusing one. I never know how do we market. It'd be quite interesting to hear if you've got opinions on this. How would we look at marketing our product at the minute in supermarkets, or do you think how it's happening at the minute is sitting in a good place as it is?
It definitely needs to change. It sort of, well, it depends how extreme you want to go. You know, governments can get involved with subsidies and taxing on the correct food groups, you know, what's healthy for you, what's not, what's been imported, what's not, higher standards, what's affordable. You know, we're trying to get out of this sort of food hierarchy system we're going into, where only the rich can afford good produce, which is firstly good for you and secondly good for the environment. So that's a dangerous precedent that we're now setting. And the supermarkets have way too much power. They don't care at all about the farmer. Some might now, like I say, things are slowly changing, but like, for example, Tesco's, I think one of their biggest clients is JBS, which is the world's biggest produce people in beef and pork and chickens. I think it was, I don't have the statistic written down, so someone else can correct me on this, but I think I saw it's about 77,000 cattle are slaughtered every single day, just under the JBS sort of figures, because they're that big. They're the world's biggest food producers, and it's just driving the wrong change, really. It's not the customers you want. You want British farmers first, and then imports to fill in the holes, not the other way around.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the likes of Aldi, well, I don't think Aldi are very good at supporting British. Well, supporting where they are. They're good at supporting Britain and Britain. They're good at supporting Germany and Germany, whatever. But Tesco, is it not something like 22? Well, I'm pretty sure it's 20-something% of the meat in Tesco is British, which is low.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. I think it was M&S and Waitrose have been moving towards the path of like 100% British in lamb. I think I read somewhere. So that sort of step could be, because we can be 100% self-sufficient in lamb. No question of doubt. There's no need to import it. So that's something that supermarkets can do. But the buying behavior is different for supermarkets. So like, what has been influencing consumer decisions for so long? You've got fast food outlets, cartoons on kids' foods, convenience foods, people that are just working far too much. Convenience foods came in and they're used to it. We've lost skills in a society on how to cook, what to cook, cooking from fresh. There's so many different issues that play into a consumer's decision on food. And we're just so disconnected from it because we don't see farming, we don't talk about it, we don't cook properly, and what's local to you as well. Like, if you can just walk down the road and you've got a fast food outlet, you're going to do that. Or if you can walk down the road and you've only got a Tesco's, that's all you're going to do. But we're just very disconnected from any options, really. We're forced into a certain choice a lot of the time.
Yeah, you're completely disconnected. And the cooking thing's a good point. So many people can't cook. Now, I'm not saying they can't make some fancy whatever. They just can't cook. If it's any more than heating up, ready meal, for example, then that's too advanced, which is quite worrying.
Very worrying. I think there's a massive, from people I've been speaking to, like chefs or around where I've been building up the whole of it, which is encouraging people to eat all different parts of the animals. I've had to learn how to cook lamb's heart and liver, and I think mincing is a great tool that you can do to disguise everything for kids. But it's like equipment as well. Like, we're expecting different people to have different equipment to cook things, which we just don't have anymore. We're not used to having it in our kitchen or available to people, because we don't want to give consumers, well, supermarkets and things, I imagine, don't want to give consumers those tools so they don't buy the ready meal products or convenience food like pizzas all the time or fast food.
It's probably true, yeah. Probably true. And like you're saying, mincing is excellent. I like the way you can hide everything. So true though. I mean, mincing's well, what mince is the cheap parts. As I'm sure we're going to get into with yourself later on. Your master's was environmental social science. Did that involve a project, or was that how?
Yeah. So my dissertation was on farmer motivation on adopting certain land practices, and then an analysis on agri-environmental schemes just before the good old elms came in. So it was really interesting to see what actually happened.
Yeah. What do you think you found from that?
The clearest thing that which we already knew, motivations are influenced by financial aid is primarily the biggest reason. The agri-environmental schemes needed to provide on that, and they're not, is the end result of what's happening. It's not clear. It needs to be group projects as well, not just based on one specific farm. Let's do areas, because they all impact each other. You could have someone spraying fertilizer or pesticide usage, insecticide, whatever it is, right on a neighboring farm, and it's impacting what they're trying to do. And so you need more link ups. You need it to link into like communities, like with local waterways and schools, and because that all makes an impact on, if you've got community supporting you and councils, that's going to boost funding. You've got support, you've got people that are going to buy your produce if you're supporting local food chains. It all links in, and it all stems back to what sort of agri-environmental scheme you're on.
Yeah, and I think I've talked a few times lately about what you mentioned, Brexit earlier, and that was sort of what originally saw you sort of look down the agricultural path, and what it means for farming. Now, I'm going to probably get some enemies in what I'm about to say here. I remembered to vote, which I didn't, so it didn't actually count, was going to vote for Brexit. Now, I looked at the sort of model of what happened in New Zealand, looked down the what happened when subsidies were taken away route, which was horrible for a few months. There was a lot of major farming mental health issues. There was suicides as well and stuff. It was dreadful. But when you look at the efficiency that created in New Zealand, it's insane. Very high efficiencies in the country from a financial perspective, not maybe as high welfare and environmental standards as we have here. And I thought, is that the way forward? Looking back now, I don't know what happens if we don't have subsidy. I don't know where we go if these schemes start to disappear. I don't know what the future is for farming, if that makes sense. What do you think? It's a tricky one. There's no answer, really, is there?
I think we're already seeing a lot of the concerns that people had around so many different aspects, the lower standards coming in, the disadvantages to farmers, the impact of health on consumers, impact on our food security. There are so many issues, like we export 45% of what we make, which is ridiculous. We should be keeping that, and then just doing a smaller exchange, because all we're doing is weakening our food security and health. I think there was one study that suggested that these trade deals was going to cost our economy 1.17 billion in sick days off, and cost to the NHS more, which is much more than what these low standard trade deals are even going to bring in, because that is the main risk to public health, which is why the Safe British Farming campaign worked so closely with dietitians and doctors, because they were so concerned about it. And then you look at the farming impacts, and you've got the NFU chief economist, like literally desperately trying to get across that he's predicted a third of farms to go bust just in the transition period, because they just cannot compete with the lower standards coming in. And then you've also got the consumer side of it. You've got 94% of people didn't want imports of lower standards, and who's listening to that?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like a missed opportunity to really back British agriculture. And then with the subsidies anyway, I think maybe if we'd done the same thing as New Zealand back in the day when New Zealand did it, when we were intensifying anyway, and we didn't know the damage it was doing to our soil or to our health or anything, then that would be fine. But because we do, and we are having a shift over to nature-friendly farming, farmers need help with that. Like there is, you're having to stock certain numbers, so that has to be made up with a price. You have to buy new technologies, you have to put up tons of electric fencing and things like that. It all comes at a cost. So I don't know how anyone could do that without subsidies.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, and sometimes I'm not going to tar the consumer with one brush here, but and probably quite a large chunk of the consumer forgets that it's a business. Farmers aren't just producing food. Well, it's what they're doing, but they do that it's a business. It's just like going to work 9 to 5. It's the same thing. And just for those listening, when we were talking about sort of intensifying a while ago, it was 1992, I think. The agricultural minister person, Ray McSharry, brought in what was the first major reform to the Common Agricultural Policy that basically just incentivized the amount of product you got off a hectare. So what that led to was people just putting thousands and thousands of livestock on, areas that couldn't hold it. The same with the amount of fertilizers and such like that were chucked on crop grounds, and what that led to was lots of compaction and lots of runoff and lots of eutrophication on water courses and welfare woes and stuff like that. So that's just to give you a bit of background if we're not sure what we're talking about when we say that. You are
time that made sense, can I point out? No one's getting angry at people for the past, but we know what happens now. We know the damage, and that's why there's a new system that needs to be supported.
Yeah, and that's a really good point to mention. I should have said that, and glad you did. That it wasn't done out of malice. We were trying to feed a country, and we were trying to feed people. Yeah, exactly. Like it was made for good intentions. But now we're sort of working with that, as you said, farming with nature and trying to increase biodiversity and environmental sustainability or regeneration, depending on what side you're looking at, while also feeding that even higher amount of people, which is a thankless task in some ways. There's a lot to it. You are not just a scholar, however, Gemma, you're also farming these days. Could you tell us about that?
Oh, it's been fun. It's been a learning curve. I think I chose the worst time to start. It was just going into winter in the Lake District, and it was brutal. Trees were down, there's no electricity or heating for weeks. It was just snowy. I was like, what have I done?
You're selling it very well.
Yeah, anyone wants to do it, don't. Unless you have a really good backup generator, so you can have a hot shower or something.
Yeah. Required.
Yeah, it's been fun. I've changed my viewpoint on a few things. You just learn as you go. You're like, I'd love to have pigs outdoors all year round, but actually maybe if they could finish inside, if you've got enough local produce, like veg farms that are just going to throw away stock or bury it, you can use that as your feed, so you're reducing your feed costs, and then you're creating a really valuable muck on the bedding, even if they're only being finished for a month, and you've got that value that you can add to your fields, because pig poop has like a really high pH, so if you've got a really acidic field, it's really handy for tackling that. So it's these other things that you don't really think about. It's sort of like a way up of, they come in for a month, despite having their entire life to roam about the farm, breaking all of my fences and ploughing up all of our lambing fields. It's excellent. But it's these sort of things that I start to consider. I'm like, you get so much more benefit for doing this, reducing waste on farms and fixing your soil, or lambing, for example. We've lambed most of our breeding stock outside, and I thought, this is going to be amazing. They're Herdwicks, super hardy, they basically lamb themselves. That's all great, but because we work incredibly hard to work in line with nature, we're surrounded by natural sites, we make sure we've got hedges in, we leave rushes up for birds to lay, all these things. It means that we've got incredibly high numbers of crows, badgers, and foxes, and I hate it when I see a lamb gone, another lamb to a crow, or 3 in a row to a badger. And I think this is a financial cost, like loss as well, because you already have a smaller stock, so that you're not damaging the soil or anything. So it just impacts you so much more. And I think, man, why don't I just lamb inside for a month? I know that goes against the whole ethos of being fully outside, but it's changed my viewpoint slightly.
I think that outside versus inside lambing is a big one. Now, we back home, you mentioned, started in winter time. In 2013, basically the southwest coast of Scotland and a bit of Wales, well, a big bit of Wales got hit with an intense snow. You're talking meters high in places. And we had bought a shed in the January prior to that March. And like, had we not, I think we had losses of, and I'm talking about unaccounted for scanned numbers as well here, of nearly 300 or nearly 400. I can't remember which one. I think it was nearly 300. And we don't have a massive flock. You're talking like 630 breeding yows. And that was with that shed. Had that shed not been there, we could have seen everything. It was, so yeah, it's more than just outside. It's more natural, which it is. But there is other things to that. And have you looked at lambing inside, or is it a potential?
Yeah. The other half of our stock did lamb inside. They were brought in lamb ewes, so they already came from somewhere that had them inside. So we kept them inside so they weren't messed about with temperature and things. And that was really easy. As soon as they lamb, go into the playpen, mother up, and then they're outside anyway. It's just that build up to birth. But yeah, I'm not against it anymore.
That's interesting to see. It's great. Sorry, I've got something in my throat. It's really annoyed me. It's sort of seeing why. Oh, but outside sounds great, and then you're like, well, there's a reason inside happens. No, I'm not saying it suits every system, because it doesn't. There's a lot of outdoor lambing systems that's just what works. But it's horses for courses. What sort of numbers of pigs and sheep have you got?
Pigs, well, I only had 6 because I wasn't really sure what I was doing with them. I quit my job and I needed something straight away, and I was like, pigs. I'll have pigs, it'll be great. So I only had 6 pigs, and then we've got a few hundred sheep. We destocked the Swaledale flock, which was quite substantial, to do this new changeover to try and create a more sustainable system of just more bang for your buck with these sheep is the hope.
Yeah, and for those of you listening, if you haven't seen Herdwicks before, hands down the cutest lambs there is. I mean, we don't have any, but there's a farm next to work where I work, and oh my god, just little fluff balls. But from a non-cute perspective, how do you find them?
Great. They're my favorite breed so far. Super hardy, no issues, look great. They're native to the Lake District, so it just ticks all the boxes. It's really important that they're hardy, because then they can be on the rough terrain that we have in some instances, and they can eat a varied diet sort of thing. So they're just great for our system.
And do you finish them, or do you still sell them store?
We're still debating. I think breeding stock wise, we will keep everything, and we'll be selling our tops and things that we're producing. And then we do have Herdwick Texel lamb crosses. Okay. They will be fat lambs. And then there's some random Leicesters that we have.
Just in the mix. The pig perspective, you mentioned you fed sort of veg from nearby that was just getting thrown out. Is that a large majority of their ration, or is it just a small part?
Well, my goal was to not use any feed at all. And this is one of the reasons I haven't kept the pigs long term. I just don't know enough. Being new to Cumbria, I don't know enough veg producers. It got really difficult to find spare food waste going around. I did work with my local bakeries and the shops down the road to get their bread waste, their veg waste. So that sort of kept it all going. Apple orchards, getting all that waste. Supermarkets, getting a few boxes that here and there. But I did have to use a bit of feed, and that was just something I really didn't want to do because of the environmental impact of that. So we've we've counteracted the use of it as much as possibly I could that year, but I would definitely, if I was going to keep them, I would want to keep reducing how much we're using.
I wouldn't see it as a failing having to get feed in your first few times. Like you've just said you're new to it. Having a bash trial and error at this stage, I wouldn't see that as a negative.
I think, well, yeah, you can't get yourself too far down, but it was one of the main things I wanted to tackle. So I'm like, oh, I wish I'd use less.
Yeah, but it sounds pretty good. I mean, the amount that you are using from elsewhere, and like you're saying, you're new to here, and I say here as if I'm there. I'm not new to where you are, and getting that sort of network takes time, yeah. And I'm sure over time that'll be there. Can you finish pigs on that, or is it hard to get them to that final level on just veg?
I finished my pigs on it. It was fine. They didn't. I think a commercial pig probably finishes around 7 to 8 months. I think ours was more 8 to 9 months when the first lot went, and the butcher said they were a dream to have. They were 52 kilograms. The fat ratio was perfect, so no complaints. Considering they were outdoor, like the majority of their life, and they're just fed on random bits and bobs, so they did great. I mean, the ones we've just recently sent to abattoir, they're even bigger, so I'm pretty keen to go and see them at the butchers and see the fat ratio, see if it's changed slightly, because they had a little bit more feed than the others, to see if that's made a difference. But otherwise, the pork that's come out has been excellent. Wouldn't.
Very good. Was it Tamworth?
Yeah. Tasty Tamworth.
Yeah, well, do you know my knowledge of pigs? I've had, what's this, number 46? I've had 46 people on this, and anyone that talks about pigs, I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about. What's their kill out percentage? Is it low 70%? Are they?
Don't know.
Not sure. No, I'm just wondering because lambs will be killing out about 45%, but I think pigs, because they're monogastric instead of in ruminants, are about 72. I think. It's fine. No, it's. I'm really interested on the whole completely weird on what's around idea. I like that a lot. Well, I've followed you for a while, but I'm pretty bad at being on Instagram. I sort of use Instagram to put my stuff out and look at nothing, which I should maybe start doing because there's a lot of cool stories out there.
A lot of mine was just pigs are out again.
People love that.
People did love it. People would get really sort of into it. If I managed to keep them in even for just like a week solid, they were like, yeah, you did it.
Proper cheering you on your pig fencing skills.
I just didn't have the money to board the entire parameter. These pigs had 6 acres to just roam about in. Like, they were tiny when we got them as well, so it's just a huge amount of land for them to just tear up and do what they wanted. They didn't even need to break out. They were purely doing it just to annoy me.
Prove they could.
Relationship with them.
Yeah, I mean, they are really clever animals, aren't they? They say they're the smartest livestock by far.
They're really personable, Tamworths.
Yeah.
They're quite cheeky and adventurous. They're not just going to lie there and let you pet your belly. They're going to run away, but they'll come back to you as soon as you call them.
But why did you leave?
Why anyway?
Yeah, exactly. Well, why did you do this? Well, they had an acre each. I mean, that's pretty spoiled. Good going.
Well, it was an experiment. That field was just box and weeds, so we couldn't put sheep in it. Nothing could go on it. It was just unproductive, so it's costing us money not being productive. And it had a really low pH, so we put high pH. What's acidic? It's the other way around.
Low. Pig stuff is high. Is that right?
I think I got it right the first time then.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you got it right the first time. Yeah.
I confused myself.
Always happens. I do it too.
Okay, well, they can plough it up. So that this is a natural way to plough it up, and we'll get some income in the meantime. And we'll see if their poop and we help at all. Soil results came back, and because the land was left alone for a year, and then we put pigs in it, that combination has just boosted the soil nutrition and everything in it. So it's good enough to plant now. We're going to try and put turnips in, which is interesting. We never would have been able to even do that a few years ago. So We've got to plough it up again because I left it too long before I ploughed, right in the middle of lambing. It was really bad timing. We've learnt our lesson. Plough it up again, but plant in a more permanent pasture, which is just going to benefit the water retention and different species in it. So I'm hoping it's going to be a better result.
Carbon sequestration as well, all plays into it. Good stuff. Oh, I actually forgot to ask, you started in winter. What year was that?
Last year.
Oh, it was just last year?
Yeah, I only fully quit my job in, I think it was August.
Right, okay. Oh, wow, right. It's very new. I don't know why a wee thumbs ups just came up on my screen.
I saw that, I was like, yeah.
I did that. I thought...
it was quite a big...
It's gone.
Do it.
People listening on Spotify will be thinking, what is happening?
Oh, just playing with the screen.
I think a good one for you would be, I've got a podcast, when we're filming this, it's coming out on Friday, with Joel Salatin, who you may or may not have heard of. If you Google him, you'll be down a rabbit hole. He's quite often referred to as the world's most famous farmer. But his big thing was his family were like sort of like the parents of regenerative farming. And some of the uses they have for pigs is very interesting. And sounding what you're doing, I think it might be quite up your street. Just a little plug.
It's really creative what people are doing. I would like to bring pigs back and have them in the hedgerows. So expand our hedgerows and then have them going in between there at some point. But that's quite far in the future.
Yeah. Well, that's and it's this sort of like integration of different livestock. Like what he does is he does feed them grain, so that's slightly different to what you're doing. He'll feed them grain, and then the grain that passes through that hasn't been digested, he'll also put chickens in with them, so they'll ruffle up all the muck, as you say, and that adds the chance of fertilization while the chickens are being fed. It's genius. Like, I mean, it's just I like seeing the ones that basically where everything has a job. Like a fun fact, and this is really getting off topic, and I think I've said it on the podcast before, but people have liked it before. If you see like the pole, like a whirligig, that's a Scottish thing, you won't know what that is. Like the spinning clotheslines, you know, the spinning ones. Am I not explaining myself here?
I don't know what that is.
You get like a clothesline for drying your clothes outside.
It looks like a spider web.
Yeah. Them,
Oh, yes,
right? So we call them whirligigs.
Why?
Whirly gig? I don't know. I didn't know. No, I'd say it out loud. I don't really know. But anyway, the little sort of like pole that they go into that's in the ground. Yeah, so it's like an empty pole. If you set one of them next to little hazelnut bushes, I think they are bushes. The squirrel will pick the hazelnuts and pop them in there for later. So you basically could take some of the hazelnuts, leave the squirrel some, and he's like a paid worker in hazelnuts.
Like, I just always wonder, like, how did someone discover that? It's just genius.
Yeah, it's one of my favourite things. And shout out to Carl at Self Sufficient Hub for that little bit of information. But yeah, there's some pretty cool things out there.
I hope you've kicked your feet up and got comfy and enjoying another fantastic episode of the R2Kast with another really interesting guest. I would just like to quickly take another second to plug the sponsors of the show today, the Scottish Farmer, and I would strongly advise you to go out and pick one up this week and see even more of the fantastic people that are in our industry.
Going away from employing squirrels, this is what Brexit has done.
Oh God.
I told you this wasn't a formal podcast. I did warn you. Yeah, here we are. I see you're a public speaker. Could you tell us a bit about that? That's fun.
Yeah, I used to do it a lot more. That was for Greenpeace back during, when did I start doing it? Oh, I think it was back when I was classed as a young speaker. So I was like 24, because I think their young speakers are only 25 and under.
Right, okay. Oh, I could still be a young speaker. That's fun.
There you go. I still do the odd bits and bobs, but I generally only talk about the food topic now. But you just go to schools and present, or during the pandemic, you're doing it online to any group that basically signs up. And you've got various different topics that they can choose, but I only choose the food ones because that's what I know.
So you would be going into schools and just talking about, well, it was before you were into farming when you started. So what were you talking about at first?
I think the first one, most of mine have always been online because of the pandemic and everything that was going on. But most of the time it's about the certain campaign that was going on. So one is to do with Amazon deforestation and linking back to JBS that we touched on earlier on today. They are basically one of the key drivers in deforestation because they need it for grain, they need it for just to house what I would call a very intensive factory farm of cattle.
Are we talking feedlots here? Sorry, is it like yeah.
Feedlot systems. And so it was all about trying to get people to stop eating that specific meat, the meat that's being imported, and instead either choose a fresh produce, or for me, I would say choose a British alternative because there's higher standards. It's not using this particular company. But things like Greenpeace have actually really targeted that campaign at Tesco's. Please start stocking more British, start stocking more vegetarian options, whatever it is, just stop using JBS. Their goal. So that's what they've been doing for a fair few years now, just really tackling Tesco's as the biggest sort of issue.
It's, when you actually think about it, when I sometimes when I go through Tesco and stuff like that, because I normally shop at Aldi, but they don't have the correct conditioner. So I don't have to go to Tesco to get that stuff. And I quite often see what was that?
That's how they reel you in.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's it. Yeah, they've got the right conditioner. Yeah. I feel like I don't give off the right impression of who I actually am sometimes, but here we are. And I sort of go and see sort of what the meat situation is. Sometimes it's quite good to get a photo of a bunch of New Zealand lamb and have a chat about it on Rudolph's Kitchen. But you don't see Argentinian and Brazilian often now. Very rarely do I see it. Now, how honest that is, I don't know. I assume very, but it's often New Zealand and Australia, not often Brazilian and Argentinian.
I think we will see a shift with the trade deals coming in, but also people clock on to the fact that they don't want imported products. So they stop looking at the labels. Our labeling standards are ridiculous. They're not, anything can slip through there. There's so many loopholes. Things can be claimed to be British and they're not. You've got supermarkets that have got fake family farms, logos and adverts and brands. It's awful. There's no focus on it at all. Or even just improving red tractor and making sure the right stickers have that on it, British flag. You could be eating anything, but a lot of the cheap produce or processed produce, anything that you wouldn't really, you're not looking at the meat like a burger, all of that stuff comes from a cheap source. So it's going to come from those farms. It's just not written on it because you're not looking for it really with those sort of food groups.
I wonder how they can get away with that sort of fake idea, the fake farm, like you say.
We let them.
I mean, well, I'll be honest. I mean, I'm someone that I would say is quite clued up on this stuff, and I didn't know much about that. So, the thing is there, and is how many people know that? I had heard of it. I didn't know it. You've just said that there, and that's I would class myself as someone that's quite up on food in the UK.
It's really difficult to know in store what is what. I know by looking at a certain brand, being like, yeah, that's true. Oh, that's not. I think if I did my research and I can got it, some of them say manufactured in the UK. That's not where it's sourced. That trips a lot of people up. Or all the fake environmental logos. There's so many different versions of Soil Association or organic, and a lot of them are certified. They're just fake. Or this is sustainable. It's got a picture of WWF on it or something. Oh, that must be really good. It's just not. It's our we don't have strict enough labeling standards for it. And I think the Global Farm Metric is suggesting that we can have a new label which takes into all sorts of considerations like the societal impact, the animal welfare, the environment, the farm business, all of this, and it should create a new label. It's still in the works. I think there's loads of other things like carbon labels. I mean, really, we could just throw all of our money into and time, DEFRA. There's they're not paid loads, they don't have much time. Why don't we just fix what we've currently got? So let's make it really strict on, you can't say it's a family farm if it's not. You cannot say anything to do with British if it's not. Let's just get really strict on that. But I think it was at the Oxford Farming Conference, and someone came on to do a talk for that. And I asked them, I was like, why aren't you focusing on this? And they just point blank ignored it. They were like, oh, it's just not enough time. And I was like, why create all these new labels? Why just focus on improving the current ones, which consumers already understand and systems are already in place to do?
Yeah. Well, I wonder if a traffic light system would work. Because when we look at food labelling, if you asked the general consumer about food labelling, I would assume the majority, the one thing they would know is the traffic light idea from a calorie, sugar, fat content perspective. So if there was like not like a sustainability traffic light or a welfare traffic light, but like I can't even think, it wouldn't be a PGI thing, it would be, but something that's a bit easier to understand. That's not, you have to sort of decipher it yourself. At the end of the day, you're a consumer, you're there to buy something, you're not there to research what you're buying. Yeah, I don't know what the answer. It's interesting that they said we don't have time.
Yeah, it's just so much for them, really. I don't know what's going on behind the doors, but I just imagine it would be a lot of chaos. Like, for example, the new public health standards coming in on food labelling, Kellogg's has just given the UK government the biggest lawsuit ever, because they're like, oh, but if you add milk to our products and our cereals, it brings the sugar content down. It's like, yeah, but this is your actual product. So there's just companies left, right and centre battling them for any piece of legislation. So how do you think a little label is going to...
No, it's not.
People that the backlash they would get is probably, I imagine, extremely strong, just for the simplest of changes, because consumers aren't savvy to it. They will look for a British flag, they will look at the traffic light system, as you say. So even then, they're not accurate really that much. There's all sorts, I mean, public health professionals know and dietitians know far more about this than I do, but from what I can gather from the different campaigns that are going on, it's just not very accurate. And then where do you stop? Do you put a pesticide label on, animal welfare, sustainability? How do you measure sustainability? Do you put a carbon? How many labels do we need?
Just be like, wait a minute, what am I actually buying? Is it a steak? That's a good point. Yeah, there's only so far. And that's where we sort of find ourselves as a consumer, putting the trust in those selling it to us. And that's where that can be not manipulated, but exploited. Yeah, it is a worry, I guess, and something that I've considered quite a fair chunk, and still not touched on all the things you've said. So it's that in itself shows that as the general consumer, that the 99%, it's not a thing you consider. The pesticides one's an interesting one. I guess if it's not organic, which it obviously does say, then you don't know the pesticide amounts. They might have been at the absolute legal limit. They might have been over the legal limit and the assurance hasn't checked, Assurance is a big thing. A lot of people have problems with Red Tractor. I don't know if you agree with that or if you want to say anything about that, but I would quite like to get someone from Red Tractor on. I've had Kate Rowell, R2Kast number 39 on. She is involved in QMS, which looks at the Scotch sort of assurance, but that won't be something that you guys will have.
I think there's so many different opinions on Red Tractor. I think it could be a really powerful tool. Do I think Red Tractor put enough time into educating the public on what it is? No. Do I think they regulate it enough and have standards high enough to actually gain something in the price difference? Like, if you've got a non-Red Tractor produce and then a Red Tractor produce, the price difference is quite a jump for not much difference. It's just that one's been ticked, one isn't. There's not a big enough jump for consumers to actually appreciate the Red Tractor. That is just from talking to people and doing various surveys and things. That's what I found. People just don't think it does enough. As organic, yeah, it's a big price jump, but they know it does something substantial. I just think nowadays Red Tractor is a way for supermarkets to control the price for farmers. I think they've got so much more paperwork to do. They don't get any money for that. It's sort of like, I think it's sugar, or is it wheat? I'm not as clued up on that, but you can't sell it to a supermarket unless it's red tractor. I think there's a few instances where it's that.
All right.
So even though that farm could be so much more than what those standards are, it just gets a red tractor label.
The wheat one, if it is the wheat and not the sugar, I think it's just England, because in Scotland we have SQC, which is Scottish Quality Cereals, and that's the assurance scheme. And I know it is not mandatory. So I think it might be sugar, but I didn't know that. So that
maybe
that then. Sorry. I'm not actually sure, because I mean, let's say that is a thing, and whatever, if it's sugar, wheat, whatever, that doesn't that completely negate the point of the assurance? If it's a complete, it has to happen, that's then just a standard.
It seems to be that supermarkets, especially as we know that consumers are wanting to buy British now, knowing that all coming in, there will be a push from supermarkets that everything is red tractor certified, because consumers already know what that is, that or the flour. So that will be even more pressure on farmers to make sure they're signing up to be red tractor, doing all this extra work for not any price difference. It's just going to become sort of mandatory, or maybe that buyer's not going to buy your meat. So
right.
I can see that happening, and I've heard cases where there's already fears of it. I just can't remember the specific examples.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure sugar is one of them.
No, it makes sense.
Words.
Do you know sugar is the only foodstuff without a sell-by date on it?
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, well, that was the case in 2018. Maybe it does now, but it didn't. Yeah, fun fact. And I think it's just granulated sugar. If it's a processed sugar like castor, so like Demerara granulated sugar it doesn't have a date. I think castor might, which makes no sense, because I thought then honey wouldn't, but it's just sugar. Honey does have. A lot of random facts in this episode.
I think it was Morrison's that stopped. Was it Morrison's that have suggested to not have use by dates on milk, or best before dates, so that you can just do a sniff test instead to reduce like lots and lots of waste of milk?
It's a tricky one, that. Now, personally, yeah, I mean, I'll drink milk even if it's bad, because, well, I was reared on eating, not bad, but, reared on eating insects off the ground, and, like, brought up the farm. Yeah, like, it doesn't, a bit of milk's not going to do any damage. But that's someone who's been reared on, used to that, drinking milk straight from the cow, that sort of thing, yeah? The worry there is people who don't know exactly what they're looking for. It could lead to a problem. I mean, I'm against sell-by dates and use bys and best befores and stuff. They were created by M&S as a way to sell more stuff. That's why they were created. I like that Morrison's are looking at that. I feel like milk's not the place to start.
I think I don't know why they've started with milk, but I think it's an interesting one, because you're bringing back that very basic skill of,
yes,
this go off. Like, I think meat would be even more dangerous to do it with processed meat, like ham and things 100%. Like that would be very scary to just leave the public. When you talk to people, back when I used to work in retail or my old job, you talk to people and they're like, oh, this is 2 days before the best before date, so I'm going to throw it away. I'm like, what? Best before date is just a suggestion. It's not even a use by date. So people are already far, like, they're so far down the line of, like, they're scared as well, because there's an association of you will get ill if you eat this past this date.
Yeah.
And it's just not necessarily true. But these are skills that we need to bring back. They're not something that you can just take away and be like, oh, go survive people. We'd have a lot of illnesses.
I completely agree that the thing that's in my head is it's a litigious society. People want to sue people. That the second someone puts a use by date, takes it off, someone gets ill, it's just going to cause lawsuits and stuff. And I wish I wasn't saying that. It sounds so negative. Because it's something I totally back. Like, I mean, my mum and dad had a farm shop. I worked in a local shop. I was brought up on food that was off. Like, That was the second the best before date was done. Grand, that's what's for dinner. Like that was what I was brought up on, and it was absolutely fine. It was just, well, it was free to me. It wasn't free to my mum and dad in the shop, but it shouldn't be a problem. But because of the way it is, suing wise and stuff, yeah. I mean, the veg, I think, is where they should start. If you can't tell veg is off, your eyes probably are struggling. Like it's a tatty has the best before date on it, but it's going to be fine in the time you're going to use it.
But it's not just that. It's like, how do you store things? That's a massive reason why things get wasted. It's things like bread, milk, potatoes, salad, apples, cheese. They're the biggest food groups to go wasting all the time in households. And it's because half the time, I reckon it is because we don't know how to store it, so it doesn't last very long. And I'm still learning to this day. Like someone said the other day, like, oh, mix this in with this, and then that doesn't get moldy, or put beeswax over banana stalks to make the bananas last longer. I was like, how do you know this?
The answer is probably TikTok.
I saw it on social media. It must be true.
But like that's one I have to try, the banana one. Oh, that's good fun.
Just on top of the bunch where they all connect up, just pop some beeswax wrap around that.
Every day is a school day. Gotta try that one.
But yeah, these are the skills that we lost.
Yeah, they are. And and I think we spoke right at the start about subsidy and how to get people on board with things, and financial incentivization is number one. It is always number one. It's ahead of health. People are losing money by throwing this food away, and is it 34.5% or 33.5%? It's one of the two. Is the amount of food we waste in the UK. That's insane. Now that's including some harvest losses, but I think about like 75% of that 30% is in the household. So like if you could reduce that's extra money in your wallet at the end of the day.
And we know we can do it because in the pandemic, our household food wastage went down dramatically because people couldn't buy things in the store. So you were having to buy fresh because we didn't have the supply chain of things coming in all the time. And it was great. And I was like, this is excellent. I was going down to my local farm store and I was like, look at all these people. Welcome. It was excellent. But yeah, it's what I did bring a statistic with me because I just find it shocking. But the UK throws away 9.5 million tons of food waste a year. At the same time, we have 8.4 million people in food poverty. And it's not normally the people in food poverty that are throwing away these things. Like these people are the ones willing to take the risk with that moldy piece of bread.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just a crazy scenario that we're living in. And I think there's a lot of education that needs to go on to just fix both ends of the spectrum.
That's it. And education's a massive part, like what you're talking about, talking in schools. I work for a charity called Rate Up here. I don't work for a charity, that's not what you do. What's the word? Be volunteer. Why couldn't I remember the word volunteer? I am one. For a charity called Rate Up, where we go into schools and talk about that and stuff. And when you're talking about that, what was it? 9.5 million
tons of food waste.
That's mental. And it's 8.5 million people in food poverty. So there's enough to give each person more than 1 ton of food. That's insane.
And that's not all down to consumers. That is government issues as well. That it's like we said at the beginning, the farming is a business. It is not the farmer's responsibility to make sure everyone is fed. And I hate the idea of people go, oh, but I'm feeding the population, especially if it's a sheep farmer. No, you're not, because half of the UK don't even eat lamb. Like, you're feeding, or the EU, like you're not. It's this mentality that we have from the war times when our food security is really low. And farmers are heroes. We do produce food, but it's not our responsibility to do anything.
Yes, yeah.
It's our responsibility to make sure our business thrives. Yes. Feed our family. Yes. It's the government's responsibility, and to make sure supermarkets are controlled, to make sure the legislation's in place, trade deals are benefiting your own economy and your own people. Or councils' responsibilities for making sure the right things happen. So Are they approving applications for local farm stores? Are they putting up food banks and with access points? Are they denying takeaways and big, businesses that are coming in and taking over? So for example, in the Lake District, if you've got a small village, you're not going to find a McDonald's there, but you will find a local store. Yes, it's more expensive. It's also a destination. So it's going to be more expensive anyway. But those sorts of decisions that can impact how that area eats.
Yeah, and I come from an island that's essentially a honeypot island as well. I get that sort of idea, but that in its you've got a history of marketing, Gemma. That in itself is marketable. Come to this place. You're not going to be able to get a drive-through McDonald's. Gutted, I wanted chicken nuggets, but you can still get something from nearby, and that's part of that experience going to places like this. That figure about the amount of wasted food, we globally we produce enough to feed 12.6 billion. The issue is the infrastructure.
I hate that, where it's always like we've got too many people. Yes, we might have too many people in terms of like everyone's driving and things like that, but we can feed everyone. It's just the infrastructure that we have and what we're eating. Like in the UK, we eat 2 times the amount of meat than anyone else. It's too much. That's why we're importing it. We could be self-sufficient and do it in an environmentally friendly way, and people can eat what you want. You can be vegan if you want. You can eat meat. Don't care. Like we can do it.
Absolutely.
We eat too much, and we eat too much processed things. That's the general what it comes down to. And then are we helping out other countries? Are we encouraging them to use pesticides that we make, that we ban here? Maybe. Or are we giving them the infrastructure and help that they need to make good food, and in return we get some wheat and they don't kill all their soil?
Yeah, it seems like a good way to look at it that way. Very good in theory and hopefully good in practice, but it's hard to implement. I think in my 5 years at uni, and even since my last 2 years working at uni, the scariest statistic I ever heard was the UK has the second highest population of malnourished 0 to 16-year-olds on the planet. Now, malnourished includes overnourished, but still. It was Sierra Leone, UK. UK and Sierra Leone are never together. Like that doesn't happen. And I remember looking at that thinking, geez, that is worrying. I was one of those children. But it's a worry. Like it's not just getting food to people, it's also limiting overconsumption as well. You clearly have quite the busy life, Gemma. You've been to uni, you now farm, but you're also a business owner, which is quite fun. If you
business owner.
What's that?
A new business owner. I'd like to point out I'm not successful to anyone that suddenly looks me up.
Still a business. I usually watching this in June or July. I can't remember yet. Whenever it is, but there's a big Q&A on Gemma's Instagram tonight. I'm very excited to see all the answers. I'll have to come up with a question. I've just spoken to you for an hour and a bit, so surely I can think of one. But yeah, could you tell us about it's whole of it, isn't it? Whole of it.
Yeah, whole of it. Well, the idea is that, I don't know how to say it without saying anything cheesy, but it's the idea that we use the whole carcass, so there's no waste, and it's including all factors of the process. So you've got your societal impact, environment, welfare, and then ourselves, our own business. So it's important to us we don't underprice anything, and that we're using local communities, like for our abattoirs and butchers or printers or bakeries, whatever it is we're doing. And it's, another avenue for our farm, because ultimately we want to. So basically that's what I'm doing. And I've started off with the cheeky Tamworths, and they've been made into charcuterie meat, because Tamworth meat is incredibly tasty. It makes a really good bacon. So I've gone all out on the taste. And so every aspect of the pig has been used, like the skin will be made into dog treats, the ears, the snout, the hooves, the big boxes of pork boxes. I'm teaching people how to make things with the organs or the bones, but then they've also got their really impressive pack of charcuterie meat. And that as well, like charcuterie meat has about a 6-month shelf life. It doesn't need to be refrigerated really, as long as it's in like a larder, which is nice and cool and dry. Then there's no waste really, because if you cannot get through that meat in 6 months, then you're not allowed to buy my product. We go through a box in one sitting. So.
Is charcuterie all salt cured? No, don't really know how it works.
Not always. I don't really know the answer to that, because I just let my butcher get on with it.
Yeah.
I go down and I learn all of like, so every time they cut them up, I go down and I look and I'm like, oh, what we're doing with this? What we're doing with this off cut? What about the cheek on that face? And he's like, yep, I can do something with that, or no. And I'm like, well, let's mince it, let's do something. And so I've been through that process, but the actual charcuterie process is very, very long. It takes 6 to 8 weeks to do.
Right.
It's a certain skill. I don't possess this skill. It's not as simple as butchery. Like, he has to go away and learn it. Some of them will get smoked. Some of them are dry cured. It depends.
Well, I need to try this. Sounds very good. Does everything get used apart from like the central nervous system? I assume it doesn't get used.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything.
Allowed to use.
Yeah. Brilliant. Do you know, when I did my master's, I went to Glasgow Uni, and there was 23 of us, 17 of which were from China. And they took me I sort of helped them a bit with, basically they'd never done English before they did a master's in English. I'm like, how does your head do this? It's amazing. You're a genius.
Linguists blow my mind.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it took me like 3 weeks to learn my name in Chinese, and Mandarin. But I would sort of help them a wee bit. Like, they would send the report to me, and I would sort of make sure it was pretty much perfect, but just sort of, and they took me to this traditional Chinese restaurant, and they ate everything. It was the feet on the duck. Everything was used. The bills were broken down, and then the rice, everything was used. And I remember thinking, like, this is just awesome. It's not like, if it's not a steak, we're not having it. Which is good.
It's something that's lost again. It's, what have the supermarkets been providing us? That's pork chops, maybe some pork mince or meatballs, bacon, sausages. That's all you really know. And then there are so many other parts of the pig that you could use. Same with lambs. Amount of people that probably only buy lamb chop or lamb leg. They don't buy lamb neck fillet or the liver or anything like this. So we'll be doing lamb boxes in the future, and it's that sort of thing. So we're getting the organs and we're creating an edible product, so that you don't have to faff around learning how to cook a heart. But it's something that will come, and then we'll look at doing beef as well and experimenting with how you do everything, just to give the consumer a chance to try it. Because if you've put liver in with, I don't know, shoulder mince, you're not going to taste it really. And it's really nutritional, and that's an easy way to get your kids to eat it. It's just a beef burger, or it's just a lamb burger, whatever it is. Let's trick them a little bit, and then once they're tricked and they're confident, tell them the truth, and you can break it down like that. But it's going to take time. Yeah.
Have you came across liver, Ken?
No.
There's a guy, Brian Johnson, in the States. Some people think he's a maniac, and here, maybe he is. He's got 1.5 million followers on Instagram, and he only started like a year ago. He lives by the ancestral tenets, which is like 10 things: sleep, earth, sun, that sort of thing. And it looks back to sort of how they did that. And he is crazy. He's not a bit crazy, he is crazy. But he lives off bone marrow and liver. Like, he's a carnivore. And seeing the positives of it's insane. Yes, he's selling his lifestyle. I get that. And he's not going to talk a lot about the negatives. But the benefits of, like, for example, liver, kidney, bone marrow, huge. He eats them raw. I assume you're not eating them raw. But but it's quite interesting. You should check him out. He's a maniac, and you have to be ready for some pretty intense videos. But it's quite interesting. How far do you deliver?
We do England next day delivery, and then Scotland 2-day delivery. But the good thing about charcuterie is that you don't really have to worry about it staying frozen or anything. I mean, we pack it with ice packs anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Next day, that's insane.
But yeah, it's quite easy to post. It'll change when we start doing lamb boxes, because that'll be fresh sort of produce, and then again with beef, I don't know, we'll see what we're gonna do. I'm working on some things with the butcher, so we'll see.
No, good. No, well, I think I have to order some. I do like charcuterie. It's just something about it.
Yeah, it's just a treat product. I was gonna say get the girls around, but
Just get everyone around, yeah. The squad around and
yeah.
have some charcuterie. Brilliant. Have you ever tried to make wine?
No.
I say we. My mum tried it at home. It worked. I don't remember that. It was it tasty? Sorry if you're listening to this, Mum. No, yes, it was lovely, but it was strong.
People try and make, what is it, like nettle beer and
Oh
things.
wow!
I didn't know this, right? So it's not the hops or anything that makes beer and cider and everything alcoholic. That's just a flavor. It's actually like a glucose sugar thing. Lack of knowledge on beer.
I know the word. I can't remember it. Yep, you're correct. Yep.
Yeah, like the nettle leaves. It's like you don't even need that really. It's for taste. It's like, do you want it to taste like nettle? Like, it just blew my mind. I didn't know that. I thought it was the hops. You know, all these pubs
For sure.
hanging down. I was like, oh, my life has been a lie.
Well, yeah, exactly. I kind of want to try. Nettle soup's a big thing, isn't it?
I've not tried it.
Have you not? Well, do you know what? I have seen people, and I think this is just a bit of a flex on some people's behalf, but they'll just pick the nettles and eat it. There's a way you can do it without stinging yourself. Now, I know I'm the person that's going to do it and just sting everywhere. Like, oh my God, I can feel it stinging on the way down. But a lot of, it's common's a lie, but people do that. I'll see if I can send you a video to show you. Maybe you can try that. Some charcuterie and nettles.
Do a nettle off and see you can eat them without dying in pain.
Sounds like hell, that doesn't.
Sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if it's what's got to be arranged, it's what got to be arranged. Do you know, I was trying to think, there must be some kind of fun name you can make for the boxes, like Tam Herdwick, Tam Worth It, or I can't come up with any more, but there could be some cool ones you could throw in there. But it probably doesn't actually make it better.
At the moment, it's a small box and big box.
Perfect. I mean, you just need Bob the Builder to sing it.
Really creative.
Exactly. Yeah, it's what's inside it that matters. Well, I mean, look, that's been fantastic. We've spoke already for an hour and 10 minutes. I think it's been really good. Sometimes it flies in, especially when talking about stuff I really enjoy, which I definitely was there. It's been great to have you on, Gemma. I've actually, I sort of filmed this in like, I do a batch, and I think at the minute I've got 12 I'm filming in the next 3 weeks. And you were in the list of the last one, and for some reason I never sent you the message. So it's been good to film it. Yeah, no, sorry. Put that over quite rudely there. I mean, I sent it and you didn't get back to me. My God.
Yeah, all right, let's turn it around.
But before I finish every podcast, there's 2 questions I ask absolutely everyone. And when I say that, they're normally like, what is it? They're really not difficult questions. One of them is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And the other one is, if you had any tips for folk coming into the industry, what would they be?
Ooh. In 5 years, I'd like to say that we're running our own farm, like a substantial farm, so that we've both got our own incomes off of a farm. That would be where I'd like to be. That's really difficult to get to.
It's a brilliant aspiration.
Yeah, and then people coming into the industry, I actually think that's incredibly difficult. It's all about who you know and work experience and accessibility. Facebook. There's looking out for people that want lambing help and just starting off with work experience, and then once you're into the network, you should be able to get through.
Good, very good.
Really, yeah, just try and get work experience. I think it's the only thing I can think of that's substantial.
No, that's what most people say. It's a good one. And I think you hear so many folk. I think my favourite story is I don't know if you've heard of Flavian Albiero.
Yeah, we love Flav.
I thought you might when you've got pigs, Kenyan pig farmer. Let's see if I can really delve back into the vault. Podcast, R2Kast number 3, I believe, was Flavian. He tells a story of he just sort of walked up loads of farm roads and knocked on their door, and if someone was there, great, he would ask them for some work, and if they weren't, they weren't. And it's, yeah, exactly, and people appreciate that sort of thing. So yeah, knocking on doors, trying hard, trying to get the experience you can. Good stuff. Listen,
the terminology actually, like if you're looking for jobs, farm hand or farm worker, you're not looking for something really specific. Like some people might type, I don't know, I want to be a tractor driver.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a good point. And to start out, anything is a good way. No, brilliant. No, very good. No, it's been great to chat. Really good to sit down. What was this? This was number 46. For those of you listening, yeah, no, it's almost number 50. We actually have number 50 arranged. We've got the next, however many, as I said earlier, lined up. Next week, guys, will be the people behind Life at Bankran Road, Saoirse and Aidan. So it's a really cool chat because they're talking about their farmhouse renovation, which I love. And the amount of TikToks I follow that is just house renovation. It's great fun. And also then sort of getting into farming as well. So another good podcast there. Thank you to you, Gemma. I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
I have, especially our pre-talk. It's very fun.
Yeah, we did speak for about 10, 15 minutes before, and I did say I wasn't right. We best hit record because we're going to sit here till 9 o'clock and not have recorded a thing and spoke about everything, food security and environmental science. It was very good. So yeah, thank you very much. We shall see you all in a week for Life at Bankran Road, and yes, see you then.
Thanks.
Well, that's it. Another R2Kast finished, another agricultural mind opened up. And I would just like to say that getting these guests on board, it does take time, and it always has done, but I've now went weekly, and with that comes even more time required. And I would just like to finally thank once more the Scottish Farmer for sponsoring the show and making that much more possible. Please be sure to get in touch if you've any ideas of people you'd like to see on the podcast, or maybe ideas you have for me presenting better, because I definitely do require that. See you in the next one.